All right, good morning, guys. All right, before we get going, just real quick, I want y'all to know I gave Josh some super hard songs today, so thank you he did a good job. But the second one, actually, I probably should have had Liam to have read this verse first. It's coming from today's lesson, but Liam's going to read for us real quick to get us started.
Matthew 23, verse 39. For I say to you, from now on you will not see me until you say, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.
So today's lesson, we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 21, and not just 21, but also chapter 22. And not just chapter 22, but also chapter 23. So if we if we go verse by verse, everything's going to be closing time by the time we get done. So we are not going to go verse by verse. I'm going to do some summarizing here. But here's the question I want y'all to ask about for today's lesson. Okay, here's the question. Y'all ready? Okay. If Jesus took you to his church, this obviously looks like a church in the 90s or something, but if Jesus took you to his church, what would you see and what would you not see? All right, Matthew chapter 21, 22, 23. If Jesus took you to his church, what would you see? What would you not see? And what we're going to look at is, I think sometimes, I talked about this last week. Remember, chapters, verses, and section headings were all added by human beings, okay? So this is all, like Matthew is just one long scroll, and we have divided it up to make more sense out of it. Does that make sense? Come on, guys, just participate, and we'll get through this. We got a lot to get through, okay? Okay, so chapter 22, chapter 21, verse 12, it says, and Jesus entered the temple, right? And then you go through 22 and you go through 23. And then chapter 20, verse 1 says Jesus came out from the temple. Right? So what does that mean? That means chapters 21, 22, 23 are all about the time that Jesus went into the temple and he came out at night, just spend the night somewhere and he went right back in. But basically, until chapter 24, verse 1, it's all about what Jesus did and said while he was at the temple. Does that make sense? And so we're going to read all that sorts of stuff that's like, if Jesus were in his Father's house, if Jesus was going to church, what kind of things would he do? Would he talk about? What are you going to see? Right? But before we do that, I've got a couple pictures for y'all. Y'all ready? All right. All right. Teenagers. Anybody know what this is? What? I think it's for like pizza dough or something. Yeah. This is let me just kind of right. This is a wringer, right, for your clothes. Like for the longest time, I mean, till like 3 days ago, I thought putting them through the ringer was like a horseshoe reference or a boxing reference, or I'm like, I have no clue where that came from. I know what people mean by that, but I don't know where it came from. What's it mean to put them through the ringer? It's like, man, they've been through. Oh man, that's a tough thing to go through, right? Okay, so if you all saw a picture of this, just looking at the design of it, you would come to some conclusions about it, right? I've got a point for this, so y'all follow along. If you see the design, you're probably thinking, well, that looks like some kind of a wheel with a handle. Maybe I'm supposed to turn it, right? And then it's like, okay, it looks like you feed something through there, and maybe that thing's going to catch stuff, that basket underneath, right? You see the design, and it testifies of its purpose. All right, there's picture number one. Picture number two, not as flashy, but if you didn't know what this was, and you're just looking at the design of it, you're kind of thinking like, I mean, it looks like a really long road to get down to the bottom. It looks like somebody that wanted to go really deep, but you can't just dig a massive hole. What do the walls look like? They're kind of tapered. So it's like they must have to, make it a little bit bigger at a time. And they're kind of coming to some conclusions about the design of it, maybe attest to the purpose of it. The way that it's built allows you to go deeper, right? Now, in a very, very simple sense, I want you all to look at the design of the temple. And here's crowd participation, except for Kelsey, because I've already talked to her about this. In a very simple sense, you all tell me what you see about the design of the temple.
Something in the middle. It's important.
There's something in the middle. Not going to go with that one, Drake. What? A lot of space. Okay. There's a big square, rectangle, right? And then there's a what?
Defensive.
Okay. Maybe like a defensive wall. There's a smaller square. And then within that, guess what there is? A smaller square, right? So in a very simple sense, just looking at the design of it, what are we trying to, what is God maybe trying to communicate? And then you go to learn more about what goes on in the temple. Okay? So there's this wall, there's this big courtyard area where everybody's allowed to go. And then you've got in the very center of this, in the smallest section of the Ark of the Covenant, which represents the presence of God. But what is in between the most central location and everybody else is in the courtyard? There's walls, there's veils, there's doors, there's a separation, right? I'm almost done, but we got to set this up. This is important. And then who all is on the payroll in the temple? Is there a gardener at the temple? Cabinet said no, right? Is there a pool boy? Is there an electrician? Okay, there's not even electricity there. It's a good point. Why would I come up with that example? Okay, so there's only one person, well, one type of person or group of people that is employed, and they are priests, and there's a high priest, and they have one job, essentially. It is to allow the people in the courtyard who are unholy, who are separated from the most holy place in God, to find a way to bridge the gap, to offer forgiveness of sins. Do y'all agree, or am I just crazy right now? Just agree with me, okay? Well, that's good. All right. I want you all to notice, like, it's not that the temple design doesn't get detailed or complicated, but as a whole, it's very simple. And as a whole, what is the one thing that he's trying to communicate visually and spiritually to everybody that comes there? This is my space. This is, Levi said, this is my wall, my border, my protection. Stuff's overlaid with gold. You know what gold doesn't do? Rust, right? It's like this is stuff that's going to last forever, and I'm in the middle of it. Why might God be in the very center of it? Because he's the most important thing. And we're separated, and we can't get to the most important thing without what happening? Sacrifice, forgiveness. That is the ultimate mission that is being communicated. Okay? Y'all agree? Please, come on. Y'all agree? All right. Now, when Jesus goes to the temple, is he going to find the number one purpose of God's temple is not to hold him? The temple can't hold God. The earth is his footstool, crying out loud, right? Is God a big person? Temple's not going to hold him. So what's the temple there? It is a visual and literal illustration of if you want to come to God, you've got to get sin taken care of, right? And so Jesus goes to the temple, and we're going to read about what he finds. So starting in chapter 21, we're going to skip on down to verses 12 through 17, and I do want to read these verses word for word. Jesus entered the temple and drove out all those who were buying and selling in the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who were selling doves. And he said to them, "It is written," Old Testament quote here, "My house shall be called a house of prayer. But you are making it a what, guys? A den of thieves, a robber's den." And the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful things that he had done, and the children who were shouting in the temple, "Hosanna to the Son of David," they became indignant. And they said to Jesus, "Do you hear what these children are saying?" And Jesus said to them, "Yes. Have you never read, out of the mouth of infants and nursing babies, you have prepared praise for yourself?" He left them and went out of the city of Bethany and spent the night there. So, first time that Jesus goes into the temple, and at its very core, what is it supposed to be doing? Offering people a chance to be in the presence of God when we don't deserve to be there. And what does he find? That's where people gather. That's a pretty strategic place for my business. Is that the purpose of the temple? No. And on top of that, it's not just doing business. It's what kind of business? Corrupt business. So it has a purpose, and you're using it for something else. And you know what else Jesus said? It's supposed to be a house of prayer, right? And this is my favorite text. Laylee, are you in here? Laylee? Bogan? Is Bogan here? Calvin? Liam? All my little kids? Listen to this. Did y'all listen? You know what the children were doing? You know what the children were doing at the temple? Come on, guys. What? Yes! Finally, I found a verse. What are the kids doing? They're shouting. It's kind of a joke, guys. All right? It's also kind of serious. What are the children doing? Hosanna! Maybe y'all didn't understand. Hosanna! Right? And I'm not saying that kids need to be disruptive. That's not my point here. But what does Jesus find? The kids are doing what? Giving praise to God. And what is Jesus not doing? Telling them to be quiet. Because what's supposed to happen at the temple? Prayer, which requires some, it's more reverent and quiet. And what's the other side of that? Praise, which is what? Loud and joyful. And what is there supposed to be? Not corrupt business, for crying out loud. I need people here who are trying to get closer to God. So what are you going to find when you go to Jesus' church? I'm not saying like disorder, just off the wall craziness, and it's like a circus. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that when Jesus is in his Father's house, this is what he sees and this is what he loves. And unfortunately, if you have the wrong kind of leaders or the wrong kind of people, you know what they're going to be jealous of? They're going to be jealous of God getting the attention. But that's not why we're here, is it, church? Because it's not about me, it's about who? It's about God. All right, then you go on. So Jesus, he spends the night in, where does that say? The city of Bethany, right? And the next day he gets up, he's on his way back to the temple. And there's this random thing, but the next three things, I think, all connect. All right? So on his way back to the temple, he sees the fig tree. And what is the fig tree not doing? I mean, is that kind of annoying? Like, Josh, is there a term for this? If somebody has a whole field of corn and there's not any corn on it? Like, is that just barren corn or something? Or
Well, there'd be lots of things that could cause that, so there's not really a generic term.
okay. But it'd be kind of annoying if you had like these 8-foot tall green things with no yellow corn coming out of them, right? It'd be hard to call it corn almost, right? So there's a fig tree, but what's not on it? So Jesus says, curse you and die, and it withers away because it's not producing fruit. Make sense? Okay. And you're like, man, Jesus must really hate fig trees. No, it's not about fig trees, is it? It's about what? It's not producing. All right. Now, let's try 100% participation. It's not about, oh, sorry, I said that wrong. It's not producing fruit, right? That's the problem. Okay. So then you go into the temple and, oh, here we go. They challenge Jesus, by what authority do you think you're doing this stuff? And so he says, I'll tell you what, I'll answer your question. You answer mine, I answer yours. By what authority was John baptizing? Was the baptism of John from heaven or from men? And so then they're like, well, if we say from heaven, then this. And if we say it came from men, then this. And so then what do they end up saying? I don't know. Don't know where it came from. It's like, okay. Well, if you're not going to be an honest enough person to answer that question, then I'm not going to answer your question, right? So they came to him. But now when he goes back to them, like, okay, now it's my turn to speak, what does Jesus talk about? He talks about these two sons. The father asked, he asked two of them to go do something. And the son, this is the John Ross son, of course, It's a joke, guys. It's going to be a joke. All right. He tells his dad, I ain't doing that. That's Will's job. That's Will's work. I ain't doing that. I'm not going to do that. But then later, you know what he does? He does what his dad says, right? And then there's perfect angel child Will. And Dad's like, Will, go do this. And you know what I say? I'm on it. I got it. Because I'm not like John. I'm going to do it. I'm the good boy, right? But then I go away and I do what? I don't do it. And Jesus says, which one did the Father's will? Was it the one that said he was going to do the Father's will? Or is it the one who did the Father's will, church? It's the one that did the Father's will, right? And he says, you know, when John came preaching to you guys, you all said you were people of God, but you didn't repent. But when John came preaching to the tax collectors, the sinners, the prostitutes who initially rejected God, you know what they did do? They did repent. And they will enter the kingdom of heaven before you ever will. They are more a child of God than you are, because even though at first they denied God and they denied his will, what did they end up doing? Producing fruit, right? All right, and then we got one more parable. Jesus, he didn't stop there. He's like, okay, that's one parable, and then here's one more. I'm going to give it to you. So he's not being asked a question. He's like, I am going to teach you. So fig tree, the two sons, and then he talks about there's a parable of this landowner that is renting out a vineyard. And he's telling this parable in the temple. He's like, there's this landowner. He's got this nice vineyard. It's got everything you need. I don't know what all you need for a vineyard, but Jesus says they got everything they need, right? They got grapes. They got the big thing to step in and squish the grapes up. They got barrels and, I don't know, water and all the stuff you need. And he rents it out to some people. And you know what they're in charge of doing while he's gone? For the third time, producing fruit, right? Y'all see a theme here? I'm not making this up. Fig tree's not producing the fruit. Which son did the Father's will in producing a fruit? And then I'm putting you in charge of this vineyard. So when I come back, what do I find? You have produced fruit. And so he sends, the landowner sends some servants to go check on this vineyard. You know what they do to the servants? Josh says. The cabin knows they didn't have guns back then, Josh. So what did they do to these servants? Killed them. And then he says, I'm going to send some more. So he sends a bunch of servants. And what do they do to a bunch of servants? Kills them too. And then he says, you know what? I'm going to send my son because they won't kill my son. And what happened when he sent his son? They actually thought, you know what? If we kill the heir to this thing, then maybe we'll get it. Verse 40. Therefore, when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those vine growers? So he asks the scribes and Pharisees, what's going to happen? This is like Nathan coming to David and talks about the ewe little lamb. It's like, what should happen? He's like, oh, that guy is just the worst. And this is what they say. Verse 1, they said to him, he will bring those wretches to a wretched end and will rent out his vineyard to other vine growers who, catch this, who will pay him the proceeds at the proper seasons. In other words, he is going to destroy them, and then he's going to put people in charge of it who are going to do what, church? For the fourth time. Produce fruits. Okay. And then you go on down, you're like, maybe that's it. And I'm like, you know, that's not it. 42. Jesus said to them, did you never read in the scriptures, the stone which the builders rejected, this became the chief cornerstone. This came about from the Lord, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore I say to you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to the people. I promise I'm not making this up. How about that? What did he say? I'm going to take this away from you. I'm going to give it to a people who's doing what? Producing fruit. And he who falls on the stone will be broken to pieces, but on whomever it falls, it will scatter him like dust. When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard this parable, they understood that he was speaking about them. When they sought to seize him, they feared the people because they considered him to be a prophet. All right. So again, Jesus at his church, what are you going to find? He is bothered, very much bothered by the example of the fig tree, by the example of these two parables that God's people, especially the scribes and Pharisees, who are supposed to be the prime example of what it means to be an Israelite, what does a Jew look like? And he's really upset because they're not doing what? They're not producing fruit. They aren't acting in such a way that looks like God has graciously allowed them to be in the presence of Him. Okay. Now, chapter 22. Then there's the parable of the king's marriage feast for his son. And I think this is also fascinating. It's just a glorious parable. But anyway, so the king is throwing a marriage feast for his son, and he invites all these people specifically, gives them specific invitation. But unfortunately, what do those people not do? Like, man, I'm busy. Didn't really like that guy anyway. Food probably won't be that good. Probably won't be any alcohol. I ain't going. Like, I ain't going. Not going. I'm just joking, guys. Okay. And so the king gets really mad. What does he do? It's like, I tell you what. You go make an infinite copy of invitations and go where? Just go out into the streets. Go out everywhere. Give it to anybody that has a hand and can take an invitation. And so then you have this wedding ceremony, this big feast, this big party, lots of people there. And I have to read this, okay? Verse 10. Those slaves went out into the streets and gathered together all they found. And I'm not making this up. This is what the Bible actually says. Gathered all they found, both evil and good. You know what that means? Everybody. I want to make y'all all say everybody, but I'm not going to. You know what that means? Both good and evil? Everybody, get that B out of there. Everybody, okay? And the wedding hall was filled with dinner guests. But when the king came in to look over the dinner guests, he saw a man there who was not dressed in wedding clothes, and he said to him, it's interesting, he says this, from a king, he says, friend. So everybody, good and evil, is at this wedding feast, but he's coming.
Hey guys, a little editor's note here. The laptop died, so we lost like a minute of footage, so sorry about that. Also, it's all Braden's fault.
Producing fruit. So I'm going to lean more towards that interpretation. There's good and evil people here. Everybody's here except the people that denied the invitation. Everybody's here. But you know who's going to get kicked out? People that aren't dressed to be there. You don't look like you're at a wedding. You're not acting like you're at a wedding. You're not acting like it. And then he goes on to, he gets tested. They're like, oh, we got an idea. We're going to test Jesus. Jesus, is it lawful to give a poll tax to Caesar? And here comes this nonsense, and Jesus like, oh, goodness gracious. Okay, bring me the coin here. What do you see on there? Whose face is there? Okay, then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and render to God things that are to God. No, you did not trap me. You still pay your taxes, right? But don't forget who's actually in charge. Okay, and then you get to the resurrection, and the Sadducees who don't believe in the resurrection, they're like, oh, we're going to test Jesus with this. This lady, she gets married, husband dies, gets remarried, to his brother, does that 7 times in the resurrection. Whose wife's she going to be? Now we got you. And it's like, no, you didn't, you dummy. That's not how this works, is it? Because we're going to be like angels in the sense of there is no marriage. And second of all, there is a resurrection. Because you believe first 5 books of the Old Testament. You know what God says in the first 5 books of the Old Testament? I, present tense, am God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What's that mean about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? They are all still alive somewhere, even though we got their bones. Even according to their book, what does the good book teach? They're alive somewhere because God says that I am currently the God of Abraham and currently the God of Isaac and currently the God of Jacob. And then lastly, the last time they test him, it's like, okay, we got you this time. What's the greatest commandment? We sang about this. Do y'all remember? Love one another. Okay. And when he gets done saying, I'll tell you what the greatest commandment is. The greatest commandment is this. Love God with everything. And the second one is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And then you get his last thing back at the scribes and Pharisees, and they don't talk to him anymore. They're like, okay, I got a question for you guys. the Christ, whose son is he? I'm like, well, the Christ is the son of David. And he says, well, then how come David says, the Lord said to my Lord? Why didn't he say, the Lord said to my son? Or why didn't he say, my son said to the Lord? He said what? The Lord said to my Lord. So the Christ, whose son is he? It's not David's son, it's God's son. So he uses the scriptures and he puts them to shame, and that's it. Last chapter, y'all are being patient. Keep it up, guys. Y'all are doing good. Last chapter, and then we're going to do our lessons. You get you're going to get like the 7 woes to the scribes and Pharisees. But anyway, this is how it starts. Jesus says, listen, these religious leaders do what they say, do not as they do. Are they telling y'all to do the right things? For the most part, they're teaching the Word of God. But you know what they're not doing? Producing fruit. It's almost like a common theme. And why do they do it? If they do produce fruit, why do they produce fruit? Is that a shiny apple I see? Right? Why are they doing it? Because they want everybody to be like, man, look at all that fruit. Look at you. Look at all the great stuff that you're doing. Is that why we do stuff, people? That's not why we do it. And then he says, here's another one. You are all brothers. Don't call anybody teacher. Don't call anybody rabbi. Don't call anybody father. Don't call anybody master. Because why? There's only one, and who is that? Jesus Christ. Is there some hierarchy in the church? Yeah. There's a little bit of like, kids answer to parents, right? There's shepherds over sheep. But in terms of salvation, Paul says in Galatians, there's neither what? Jew nor Greek, male nor female, slave nor free. In terms of salvation, is anybody in this room more or less saved than anybody else? Okay. But you know what happened at Jesus' church that he had to fix? People didn't think that. So Jesus closes it out with, whoever is humbled shall be exalted, whoever is exalted shall be humbled, and he has the 7 woes to the Pharisees. Here they are. Number 1, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut off the kingdom of heaven from people. Guys, this is a really big deal. I don't know if y'all are hot or tired, or if I've just lost my ability to keep your attention. But for this last little bit, this is really important, okay? Jesus calls people out because they are keeping people from being saved. Do y'all understand that? Because at the end of the day, we're here to do a lot of things when we get together for church. Y'all put your little money in the box and keep paying me. I love that. That's great. Right? Josh and Ashley, keep bringing the donuts. Y'all get you a donut. But at the end of the day, church, why are we here? Because we want people to be saved. Right? Why is the temple laid out the way that it's laid out? Where is the section in the temple for the bakery? Well, that's not in the temple. Why? Because that's not God's business. God's in the business of getting people who are unholy to somehow get into the presence of the holy God through sacrifice. Whose sacrifice? Jesus. And what are the scribes and Pharisees doing? You are not allowing some people to enter the kingdom of heaven. Shame on you. That is not your decision. Here's the second thing. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, because you travel around on sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves. Here's the short version of that. You are converting them to the wrong thing. All right? Some say I'm of Paul. Some say I'm of Cephas. Some say I'm of Apollos. And Paul says, no. Who am I of? Y'all know that passage? I don't mean Brenda do. I am of who? Jesus. You're not converted to Sugar Grove Church of Christ. You're converted to Christ. The end of that thing. You're not converted to Will. You're not converted to your mom and dad. You're not converted to the Catholic Church, the Pope, or anybody else. Who are you converted to? Jesus. And when you convert people to the wrong thing, guess what you're doing? You're making them twice as much a son of hell as if you just left them alone. Because you're converting them to the wrong thing. Will didn't die for you. Neither did Sugar Grove. Neither did Muhammad. Neither did anybody else. Jesus did. The third woe. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the temple, well, that is nothing. But whoever swears by the gold of the temple is obligated. You fools and blind men, which is more important? All right, here's the third thing that they do wrong. They misunderstand what is important. So you know what you're going to find at Jesus' church? The important things are actually what? How come your preacher's not wearing a tie? Oh, man. You think Jesus is going to be laying into me on that? I don't think so. Hence, I ain't wearing a tie, right? Somebody misspelled somebody's name in the bulletin. That'd be Kelsey. She's in charge of it. Somebody put the wrong date in the bulletin. Somebody didn't put my name in the bulletin. Where's my name at? Somebody's sitting in my seat this morning. Get out of my seat. You know what I'm thinking? Maybe we don't have the right things important, do we? Okay? So keep the things important that are important. Is it the temple or is it the gold? It'd be the temple. That's what I swear by. The gold means nothing. Here's number 4. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier provisions of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. But all of these things you should have done without neglecting the others. Same thing, same song, different verse. Like, man, I am so good at going down to my garden, go to my tomato plant. I got 10 tomatoes on there. I'm going to take one of them off, give them to God. I've done my 10th. Man, I'm keeping it by the book. Awesome. Are you merciful towards your neighbor? No. Why would I do that? Do you stand up for justice? No. Why would I do that? Are you faithful and loyal to your Creator? No. But I gave a 10th of my green beans to God. Do y'all see a problem there? Now, does God still want a 10th? Yeah. Under their law, yeah. Like, still give a 10th. But my word, folks, keep the important things important. Faith, justice, and mercy. Do that stuff. And then you're like, and then you go to number 5. Number 5. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and of the dish, but inside they are full of robbery and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisees, first clean the inside of the cup of the dish, so that your outside of it may be clean also. Listen, anybody ever let your kids do the dishes? And I don't even mean put them in the dishwasher. I mean, have you ever let your kids scrub the dishes? Look, at the end of the day, if they get done scrubbing the dishes, and the handle on the spoon has got a little sticky something on it, like, I can live with that. But if the head of the spoon has something sticky on it, I'm not eating, okay? If they hand me a bowl, and there's like still a little something, it's like a little something crusty on the outside, like, it's annoying, that's okay. But if they hand me a bowl and there's crusty stuff on the inside, what am I not going to do? Because that's where I eat out of, right? If you eat the outside of the bowl, you need to go get some medicine, okay? You don't eat the outside of the bowl, you eat from the inside, right? And so it's like, what are you all doing? You're worried that the outside of the cup's going to make you dirty? It's the stuff that you're drinking that's going to make you unclean. Make sense? Okay. So missing the point. And then you get to number 6. What do you scribes and Pharisees? You are like a whitewashed tomb, which on the outside appears beautiful, but on the inside are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. So you too outwardly appear righteous to men, but inwardly you're full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. When we went to a funeral a couple weeks ago, I'm telling you, it never fails. It's just like it's going to happen. It's one of those above ground tombs. It's like a big 12,000-pound slab of like marble box. And one of them found his way to like, oh, cool. Look at this playground in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, what are you doing? Get off of that dead person's tomb. Like, what are you nuts? Like, what are you doing? But isn't it kind of funny? Isn't it kind of funny if people spend like $20,000 on these beautiful engravings and this thing to just look beautiful? And they want you to weed around it. And they want you to change the flowers around it. And they want you to honor it. And you know what's on the inside? Worm food. Worm food. You paid $20,000 to help take care of some worms. Isn't that crazy? Mom's like, cremation. Like, amen, Mom, all the way. I'm glad that the outside looks good, but what does the inside look like? The inside doesn't look good. And then you get to the very last one. What do you scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites? For you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the monuments of the righteous and say, if we had been living in the days of our fathers, we would have never been partners with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. So what do? The last woe is that they think, if I had been there, I would have done the right thing. Instead of saying, maybe I'm guilty. You remember the two men that went to the temple to pray? And which one went home justified? The one who said, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Who was justified? The one who accepted his guilt and took responsibility of it. Okay, and here we're going to close it out. I'm sorry, guys. I know this is a lot, but this is an important lesson. I don't know if y'all want to take a break, go to the bathroom, whatever, but oh, that'd be important. That's probably a good sermon illustration. All right, let's try it one more time. Okay. If you went to Jesus' church, what would you not see? You're not going to see corruption in business. You're not going to see jealousy and indignation, because it's not about me, it's about who? It's about God. You're not going to see barren fig tree, no actions, not dressed for the wedding, the son who says I'll do one thing but then goes away and doesn't do it. What are you going to find? Producers of fruit. That is not what saves us. But if you've been saved, you're going to act like you're saved. You're not going to find testing and provoking. Our goal here is not to have Bible class and to get in a fight every Sunday, is it? If we got genuine questions, what do we need to do? Let's talk about that. The scribes and Pharisees, they didn't want to know what the truth was. They just wanted to pick a fight with Jesus and prove him wrong so they didn't lose their power and their greed and their wealth and everything else. You're not going to find false teaching and twisting scriptures. You're not going to find hypocrisy, which is habitually preaching and acting differently. You're not going to find people that are going to keep the world from God. This is that thing in Ephesians. He broke down that wall of division. Hey, boys. Shh. He broke down that wall of division. Y'all know that, like, in the original blueprints, there was no wall separating Jews and Gentiles in the temple. But by the time you got to the first century, you know what they had built? A wall to separate Jews and Gentiles. What does that mean? They're starting to pick who's allowed to be in here and who's not. Is that your job? Is that my job? So-and-so could never be saved. They would never surrender their life to Christ. They are not worthy. You know who else isn't worthy? Who, guys? Who else is not worthy? All of us. None of us are worthy. What you're not going to find is anybody that is keeping people from God. You're not going to find being converted to the wrong thing. You're not going to find majoring in minors. You're not going to find obeying only part of the law. You're going to obey the whole thing. You're not going to be concerned about appearances, and you're not going to lie to yourselves about your own guilt. At Jesus' church, you're going to find a group full of people that are taking responsibility for their actions. I need to be here, and I need to be forgiven because I have sinned and screwed up. And if you have not sinned and screwed up, you don't need Jesus, and you don't need to be at this church. You don't need to be at any church. You're fine. But this is not a hotel for saints, is it, Joe? What is it? It's a hospital for sinners. That's Joe's quote. What are you going to see? You're going to find prayer. You're going to find healing and wonderful things. Love this, guys. Kids, children shouting praise. Found it. Proof text. Can't get mad at our kids. You're going to find children shouting praise, scripture being quoted, correcting the religious. You know what else you're going to find? Very sinful people. Very sinful people. You're going to find people that believe, but that have remorse that turns into action with fruits. You're going to find who is invited? Go into the streets, and you invite both the good and the... Everybody's invited. You're also going to find individual judgment from God. Because when he's at this wedding feast, he goes to a specific person. He says, what are you doing here? What does that mean? The whole church is not going to heaven, right? You're individually accountable for, am I being the person I need to be? Have I surrendered to God? Not them, not like I'm a part of a good church. What is God's judgment on me individually. You're going to find equality in salvation. You're going to find humble servants. Is Jesus the King of Kings and Lord of Lords? And he still grabbed a towel and did what? Washed the disciples' feet. You're going to find knowing what's actually important, a focus on the heart. You're even going to find, Jesus goes on to say, the righteous being sacrificed in order to prove the guilt of the condemned. That's a really awkward thing to say. But the point is, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And the last thing, John 8, 21, 24, and 56. You know what they all say? You're not going to heaven until you admit that I am He. You're not going to be a part of the kingdom until you admit that I am He. The very last thing, Liam read this, the very last thing. Jesus says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I longed to gather you under my wings, like a hen does her baby chicks. What does that mean? I wanted to take you in, but what'd you do? You rejected me. You said, I don't need you. And so he says, behold, your house is being left to you desolate. What does desolate mean? Empty. What does that mean? You've got a nice big fancy structure, the temple, and who is not there? What? God. Do y'all know that? I'm sorry. I'm just going to tell you. Y'all know Tiberius, one of the emperors, when he came in and he destroyed Jerusalem and he burned everything and he destroys the temple. There's a big pillar. I think it's in Rome, but there's this huge monument over in Rome that talks about all of Tiberius's conquerings, and there's a section on there of his conquering of Jerusalem and the temple. And you know what he has listed on there? All the stuff that you would find right before you walked into the most holy place, like all these great things that he looted. You know the one thing that he does not mention that he looted? They made a movie about it. The Ark of the Covenant. Because why? Because by the time Tiberius got there, you know who was not there? God was not there. God was not there. They're standing around worshiping an empty place. And then Liam read for us, for I say to you, from now on, you will not see me until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So church family, what are you doing to experience or to help others experience the church gathering the way Jesus would have wanted? Individual responsibility. What are you doing to experience or to help others experience the church gathering the way Jesus would have wanted? With the number one purpose being, forgive unholy people so they can draw closer to a holy God. You know what is also fascinating to me? You know, what I would argue is the only physical thing that is left over from the Old Testament, the only physical thing that we do, the only physical thing that we still carry with us, that if you wanted to start a church somewhere, do you have to have a building? Do you have to have speakers? If you wanted to have a church anywhere in the world, there's only one thing that you have to have physically. It's bread and juice. How accessible is unleavened bread and fruit that comes from vines? Can you get a hold of that somewhere? And what does that represent? Jesus' body and blood and the sacrifice to allow unholy people to be in the holy presence of God. Everything else, don't need it anymore. You can start a church anywhere, on any continent, under any set of circumstances, and the only physical thing that you're still going to carry over is I want you to remember on the first day of the week when Jesus was resurrected, remember that he was crucified, to tear the veil from top to bottom for God's doing, not man's doing, that allows us to enter into his presence. So I encourage you guys, please, church, let's try to do our best to experience what it's like to be in the presence of God and to not lose the original mission. The original mission, to forgive unholy people so that they can draw close to a holy God. The scribes and Pharisees veered way far off of that. Totally missed the point. They missed the mark, but we don't want to miss the mark. If you're here today and you've not experienced forgiveness, let us connect you with Jesus. If you're here today and you have, don't forget that is, at the end of the day, that's why we're here. That's why we're here, is to give glory to God. That thankfully, He found a way to make somebody like me worthy to be in His presence. If you have a need, why don't you come forward together, we stand and sing.
Hey there, this is Josh Johnston. I'm an elder at the church and I work really closely with the teens. I hope you liked the video. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to know when we are live, or even better, join us in person at 1 Scenic Lane, Horse Branch, Kentucky, 42349. We meet on Sundays at 9:30 for Sunday school, then worship service at 10:30, and then a midweek Bible study Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. for adults and teens. We also have class for small children as well.